Yo dudes, the Empire is pretty chill. Well, not exactly. Serving in the Galactic Empire kinda sucked if your name wasn't Palpatine. That probably won't surprise you. It's an evil space dictatorship that exploited its civilians and was headed up by a Sith Lord. I mean, the Empire did nothing wrong. Recently, we made a video about the 10 worst jobs for a clone trooper and felt it was only right to today take a look at the Galactic Republic's successor state. These are the 10 worst jobs in the Galactic Empire. Number 1. Death Star Gunner. Also known as engineers, Imperial gunners were recruits from the Imperial Navy's piloting program that were either still in training or washed out. Even though they didn't make it into the cockpit of a TIE fighter, more on that shortly, Imperial gunners nonetheless possessed keen eyes, superior reflexes, and a rapport with specialized equipment. As such, they were tasked to use their skills with weapons to handle the powerful turbo lasers and ion cannons of Imperial vessels, notably the Death Star's super laser. The act of firing the super laser of the planet-killing battle station wasn't a job for the faint of heart. While a stormtrooper would be lucky enough to shoot a few hundred rebels with their blaster, the Death Star super laser could quickly wipe a star system off the galactic map. The destruction of Jeddah City probably killed a few million, even though most of which were likely rebels, or at the very least those that didn't support the Empire. Scarif, on the other hand, would have involved the gunners firing mainly at their fellow Imperials. Then, of course, worst of all was the total destruction of Alderaan, which killed over 2 billion people. That has to wear on the consciousness of the Death Star gunners pulling the lever. Then, of course, there's the fact that these gunners work directly under high-ranking Imperials like Grand Moff Tarkin. In the Age of the Rebellion comics, we actually see how tough he was on these gunners. Before the first full test of the Death Star, Tarkin had a test run on the planet of Rango Tan. His real intention here was to test the mettle of the 168 gunners, and as he suspected, there were some who failed to execute their protocols at the right time. After installing bio-trackers in the gunners who destroyed Alderaan, Tarkin learned that several of them had hesitated to carry out their orders at key moments and proceeded to punish all the gunners by shutting them in an airlock and jettisoning them into space. Number 2. Phase Zero Dark Trooper. These troopers were prominently featured in the classic Star Wars Battlefront games. However, their story is quite disturbing. The Dark Trooper Phase Zero project was implemented in the early years of the Empire to deal with a shortage of experienced troops. To return veterans of the Clone Wars to peak condition, their limbs and organs were removed and replaced with cybernetics using much of the same technology that transformed Darth Vader into a cyborg. In some cases, over 70% of a clone's organic body was replaced. With their years of combat experience and cybernetic enhancements, the units that did make it onto the field were undeniably effective. Armed with jump packs and weapons that included arc casters and commando pistols, they were some of the Empire's most fearsome soldiers. However, as the subjects were forcibly recruited into the project, many Phase Zero Dark Troopers could not cope with the state of being more machine than man and attempted suicide. The project was eventually shut down as the Empire grew in power and the recruitment rate of non-clones rose. The few successful subjects of the project became the Purge Troopers, not the red ones we see alongside the Inquisitors in the Jedi games and Kenobi series, but the much larger ones seen in The Force Unleashed. Number 3. Laser Tunnel Technician. Back to the Death Star firing team we go, this time to the laser tunnel with these two guys on the left. Because what's worse than firing a planet-killing super laser? How about standing a few feet away from one every time it fires? And as Family Guy pointed out, they didn't even get a hand railing.
So anyway, I says forget the dental plan, forget sick leave, I just want a railing. You know, one railing, right here.
Yeah, I know, I've almost fallen over that thing so many times. So what'd they say?
Oh, get this. They said they're worried we'd be leaning all day.
Oh, they said that?
Yeah.
Well, none of this will matter when we're famous singers.
When the Death Star fires, you can even see these guys shielding their eyes. Yet the ones pulling the lever get a protective helmet? I can only imagine the amount of radiation that thing gave off. I guess it's a good thing that the Death Star was blown up. That's probably the quickest death these guys could have hoped for. Number 4, Death Squadron Officer. Death Squadron was a naval squadron of the Imperial Navy that served as the personal armada of none other than Darth Vader. You can probably tell where this one is going. The Death Squadron was led by Vader's flagship, the Executor, which was typically supported by 5 smaller Imperial-class Star Destroyers. It's the high-ranking men in charge of these ships, whether they be admirals or captains, that had the unfortunate job of telling Darth Vader when they messed up. And as you probably know, telling the guy with the worst anger issues in the galaxy that you made a mistake didn't exactly go well. Take, for example, Admiral Ozzel, who ordered the fleet to emerge from hyperspace too close to Hoth, alerting the rebellion to their presence. Due to this incompetence, he suddenly forgot how to breathe. Then there was Captain Nita, who lost the Millennium Falcon in the asteroid field. He took full responsibility, but still faced execution at the hands of Lord Vader's invisible grip. Number 5, Flame Trooper. Like their Republic predecessors, the Clone Flame Troopers, Imperial Flame Troopers and Incinerator Troopers were equipped with incendiary weapons. They were deployed to planets like Kashyyyk to defend Imperial facilities against native fauna. This included the deadly Wyshock spider. When it came to battle, Flame Troopers were particularly vulnerable at long range. Their primary weapon also produced a massive fireball, which would have drawn attention from a considerable distance. Firing a flamethrower was as good as shouting, "Hey, I'm right here, come shoot me." Then there was the Incinerator Trooper in Moff Gideon's Imperial Remnant that didn't even get the proper protective equipment worn by the earlier seen Flame Troopers. This particular one also had the displeasure of running into a Force-sensitive little goblin in Grogu. Number 6, Scout Trooper. Scout Troopers were used on a range of missions which mostly involved reconnaissance. In particular, Scout Troopers often rode speeder bikes or served as snipers. They had lighter armor than standard troopers, allowing for better maneuverability. However, this armor was also significantly less protective than standard stormtroopers, which was already pretty pathetic, even against the makeshift spears and weapons of the Ewoks. Then there was the issue of the speeder a scout trooper rode on. The 74Z speeder bike could reach speeds of up to 500 kilometers per hour. The average reaction time for a human driver in a car on Earth is said to be about 3/4 of a second. That's how long it takes for you to move your foot from the gas to the brake pedal in response to a road situation. Now imagine you're essentially on a floating motorcycle going hundreds of kilometers an hour. A trooper's reaction time just wouldn't be fast enough to react to a hazard, as seen in Return of the Jedi. Number 7, Snow Trooper. Cold weather assault stormtroopers were trained to operate in the frigid tundra of planets like Hoth. Snowtrooper armor was well insulated to protect against the extreme cold, with a suit and heated breather mask. Simply put, being assigned to a frigid world like Hoth wasn't going to be fun, especially on a planet home to creatures like Wampas. In a deleted scene from The Empire Strikes Back, several snowtroopers were actually slain by a Wampa after opening a door to a room with a clearly marked warning sign. Number 8, TIE Pilot. TIE pilots served in the Starfighter Corps by flying the various twin-ion engine starships. Within the Imperial forces, TIE pilots were often referred to as coffin jockeys due to the high mortality rate of those manning the vulnerable TIE fighters. The cockpit of a TIE was neither spacious nor luxurious, even compared to those of other starfighters. A TIE fighter was designed with the bare minimum a ship needed to function, being essentially nothing more than a cockpit with weapons on the front and an engine in the rear. The TIE fighter lacked shields, a life support system, and even a hyperdrive, meaning if a TIE pilot was left behind by a Star Destroyer, they were as good as dead. The Empire prioritized having a cheaply made ship that could be easily replaced with another unfortunate soul in the cockpit. Number 9, Swamp Trooper. Swamp Troopers or Mud Troopers were a lesser infantry unit in comparison to Stormtroopers. They in fact technically existed outside of the Stormtrooper Corps. Imperial naval cadets deemed to be insubordinate, such as a young Han Solo, were often reassigned to infantry duty as Swamp Troopers. Due to the often hazardous nature of the various worlds the Empire found itself subjugating, Mud Troopers wore goggles for eye protection and oxygen masks to filter out potentially dangerous substances. They saw some of the worst battles, engaging in trench warfare on planets like Mimban. Number 10, Inquisitor. Once Jedi in their own right, at the time of Order 66, Inquisitors were given a choice between death and servitude to the Sith. Several were also tortured into accepting their role within the Empire. This role was to hunt down and kill other surviving Jedi, and also capture Force-sensitive children that could also be manipulated into servants of the Sith. The Inquisitors were trained by the Grand Inquisitor and Darth Vader personally, with some of Vader's training sessions causing some Inquisitors to lose limbs as a lesson in loss. As they were servants of the Sith, Darth Sidious also ensured that the Inquisitors weren't privy to all the knowledge and skills of a Sith Lord, as to not threaten he and Vader. As with Death Squadron, should an Inquisitor fail the Sith Lords, Vader didn't hesitate to eliminate them. Eventually, the Empire came to consider the Jedi to be finally extinct, and the Inquisitors were said to have vanished with them. Lastly, we wanted to give a very brief honorable mention to Darth Vader himself, since this wasn't technically a job that anyone else could have, but the former Anakin Skywalker's life could be described in one word: painful. He believed he had killed his beloved wife Padme and a potential child with her. His body had been replaced by a mechanical enclosure just to keep him alive, a suit which was intentionally designed by Palpatine to be as painful as possible. Under the suit, he was horribly disfigured and was now grossly ugly, more machine than man, all caused by a former mentor and friend who Vader believed had betrayed him. Plus, he now had to depend on and serve a vicious, ruthless emperor whom he had zero chance of overthrowing in his current state. Maybe the Empire wasn't so chill after all. But which job in the Galactic Empire do you think was the worst? Let me know in the comments. Come join us to chat more at our community Discord server, linked in the description. If you enjoyed today's Star Wars video, we've got more on the screen for you right now. Also make sure to drop a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe to join the Red Squadron. Until next time, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you. Red 5, standing by.